No, it's fine. My name is Kori, and I'm a senior software engineer at a company called Tear Services. So before I go to my professional background, let's say where I grew up, what I did in school. So I grew up in Nairobi. I grew up in Kiambu. I've grown up there for most of my life. I went to Kiambu High School, and then in campus, I did computer technology at Technical University of Kenya, which is equivalent to computer science in other schools. Then for my professional career, I'm mainly I'm a full stack engineer, but of late I've been moving more and more away from the front end and going back to my first love, which was back-end engineering. So I mainly work in fintech products, but we're going to get to more questions later so that you can understand how is it that I got here and why I love doing what I do.
Nice, very nice. Thanks for that. I hope Saya Wishi Kiambu, as the way you've said, born, raised in Kiambu and all that.
I live in Kiambu.
Wow, damn.
Yeah.
So
Kiambu is my first love.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So any fun facts about you? Any at a mod?
Yeah, I draw, I paint. So since I'm in an artistic environment, I draw and I paint. That's a fun fact about me.
Nice. So let's get now into it. When you're introducing yourself, you mentioned that you're a back-end dev, back-end and full stack.
Yeah,
right?
I'm full stack. Yeah, I'm full stack.
Cool. So can you explain to us, to a newbie, who is a full stack? What is backend? What is front end? Like, assuming you're explaining to a 5-year-old, what do they mean?
Okay, so I'm going to explain software engineering. Then you can break it down to front end and back end.
Sure.
Yeah. So if I'm explaining this to a 5-year-old, imagine, so you're a 5-year-old, I'm going to break it down to simplest term. Yeah, kababa. So imagine you're reading a storybook, right? You're reading a storybook, and this storybook has different characters. In there, you have the main character, you have different characters that behave in certain ways. So you, as a story writer, you have to give each of them a personality, the way they behave, and give them instructions on how the story is going to go. So as a software engineer, you're the story writer in this case, and your storybook that you're writing is a computer. So to write instructions to different characters, you use code to give the computer instructions. So that's what a software engineer does. On a high level, you write code that instructs the computer on what to do. So when you asked about back-end engineering and front-end engineering, in a modern web, how we are at the moment, there's been a clear distinction of how we code. You find that there's a separation between roles, and in that you have back-end engineers. So back-end engineers mainly interact with. Okay, let me start with the simplest one for this group. A front-end engineer writes code for the browser, one that runs in your Chrome or Firefox or whichever browser that you use. The code that's going to run there, that one is written by a front-end engineer. And then, since we decoupled the front-end and the back-end, nowadays, you need this front-end code, this front-end application that you wrote needs to interact with the database, needs to have compute, an API and whatnot. So that's what a back-end engineer, you write code that's going to be hosted in a server. And that code interacts with a database. It provides an API to give data to your application. And then it interacts with cloud computing services like AWS and all that kind of stuff. So that's what a backend engineer does.
Okay. Front end.
I started with front end. Yes. So I started with front end. Yeah, and then so there's a clear distinction of the kind of tools that you're going to use. In front end, you use HTML, JavaScript, CSS. And then in the backend, we have a lot of languages that you can use for the backend, like Python, JavaScript as well. There's so many languages that you can use for the backend.
Right. Now full stack.
So full stack is an amalgamation of the two tools. So that means that you know how to do both front end and back end.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay, cool. Nice. I saw another analogy. You can compare it to a waiter, a chef, and a waiter and a chef in a restaurant. So a waiter is the front end, and then I take orders from customers, and then they take them back to the chef to prepare the orders. Who the chef now is the back end, who does everything.
Yeah.
And taking them back is now the API is connecting pretty much.
Yeah,
all
that's
right.
pretty much it.
Cool. I think as a 5-year-old ni sijui kaa ningeelewa, but nimeelewa. So tell me, how did you start developing? When did you start coding? When did you start? What was your first project? What was your first code like?
Okay. Yeah, so this goes back a long time ago when I was a kid. So my interest in computing was picked when my dad, I think I was around 5 years old. I think I was 8 years. My dad came home with a broken laptop. He gave it to us and said, you can have it. So at the time, laptops were not something that you could find often, and it was broken. So I really wanted to fix it so that I could use it. So I ripped it apart and I started tinkering with the motherboard and the hardware and the battery, just to try to revive the laptop so that I could use it. Sadly, I couldn't revive the laptop. It was broken beyond repair. So that incident piqued my interest in computers, and then they introduced computer lessons in our school around when I was in class 6 thereabout, and I used to go and play games there, not necessarily that I wanted to learn about computers, but that whole process was eye-opening for me, and I got to see what you could do with computers. So that's how my interest in computers started. And then, so how I started coding, I didn't even do computer in high school. The first time I got into a professional computer class was when I was in campus, when I decided to do computer technology. And so that's where I first interacted with actual code. We didn't really code as much in school. We used some antiquated language called Pascal, and I didn't like that one. So what happened is I went to, we had a teacher strike because there was a national lecturer strike at the time, and it was 3 months long. And during this time, watching movies in the house. And then one day I'm thinking every day is like the last day. So I got really bored, just staying in the house doing nothing. So I remembered, okay, maybe let me give this computer thing a try. And I went to YouTube and started downloading tutorials on Python, on C language. So I gave myself a refresher on that. So my first programming project was a grading system for students. I did it in C, but then quickly I got tired of C. So I started doing Python, and I learned that over 1 year, just teaching myself, doing projects on my own. And that's how I came to learn code. This was in second year, third year in campus.
Nice. Which year? Which year?
Second year.
2000.
2018. Yeah.
Oh, nice. So what's your favorite coding language?
Yeah, I like Python. Python has been a life-changing language for me. Most of my career I used Python actually, because I like it because of how simple it is to pick up and also how diverse it is. You can do so much with it. You can do backend, you can write system scripts with it, you can write really robust systems with it as well, and also do data analytics with it. So that's why I like it. But I also like other languages. I like JavaScript, I like Golang and Solidity. But by far my favorite is Python. So far. Yes.
Python.
Yeah.
So you'd recommend someone who's starting Anzena Python?
For sure. It's like reading English.
Okay, interesting. Okay.
But it also depends on the role that you want to do. If you want to do front end, I would definitely not advise you to start with Python. JavaScript is the way to go. But for me, I wanted to do backend, so I started with Python.
Okay, but front ends you start with HTML, CSS.
Yeah. Oh yeah. If you want to give it more interactivity, and then how our modern stack is, you still have to learn JavaScript at the end of the day. So I'm not sure if HTML and CSS is a language, but if it is, you start with HTML. You start with HTML and CSS.
I'm sorry. Cool. Well, for me, it's a language. So what's the coolest thing you've ever built in code? And have you ever faced any tough coding challenge?
Yeah, obviously.
With your own project, what's not even work related, you like it will build it for like wow. In mean meeting na code minim kali kajipiga
okay, I don't know, because I don't have my own project that I'd say it was really interesting. All of it have been professional. The reason is I've been working for so long that I hardly have time for personal projects nowadays. Even when I started, I didn't have as much time for personal projects. So, but one that I loved, and it was a file management system for a company called Minor Export. It's a company in industrial area. So what had happened, they had been hacked a week before an audit. So someone came into the system and deleted all their files. So they wanted a solution. They didn't want that to happen again. So they wanted a solution where they could control who can access their files and give permissions to different levels of the device. I'm not sure why they didn't opt for something like Microsoft Office 365, but they wanted a custom solution for themselves. I think it's about a matter of cost. So what I did, I created an application where it's like Dropbox. It's like an exact copy of Dropbox. You create files and you get to interact with the hardware itself. But then the front end, I built it with Vue.js. And that project, the reason I liked it so much is because I got to interact with the operating system directly, and then match that with an interface on the front end. That way you could easily visualize the kind of files you build and who has permissions to what. That was a good project. It was difficult, but I loved it.
You pulled it.
Yes.
Yeah,
I loved it.
So they got their things back after.
Yeah, they got their things back, and they could now control who has access to what. That way they could include their projects again.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. If you could code anything in the world without limitation, what would you do? What would you code? And tied to that question is, what is your biggest challenge have you faced while coding? Let's say you're not limited to coding. What would you code? And
okay, what I had code. Let me start with that, and then we can start coming together. So I'd code a learning management system, a system where people could come and learn and pick up knowledge for free, because I'm a big proponent of knowledge and knowledge sharing. So if I could have a system that has all the knowledge in the world, I would put it there, and then people can come and get whatever they want, whatever course they want to do it for free and top tier quality material. I love teaching, and I think hopefully in future I can become a lecturer somewhere. Nikishaomoka kabisa, in future I can become a lecturer. So that's why that is very close to my heart. The biggest challenge, I've had big challenges in my career. So one of them, okay, in software engineering, you have to learn a lot, and I think it's the same for UI UX. Every day the landscape is changing, so you need to keep up to date with all the latest technologies that are out there, and that can be very daunting for a person, because one day you might go out of work if you don't keep up with all the latest technologies. But how I managed to do that, I've signed up for a lot of newsletters. I follow interesting people on Twitter. So that way I get to keep up to date with what's new. Technically, a big challenge that I faced recently, in our company, we've been moving our infrastructure. So our company was bought by a bigger company, and when we were bought, it's a merger and acquisition. So when we were bought, we had to migrate all our infrastructure from the way you used to host them in AWS and move them to a brand new, it's a more robust system, but it's quite difficult to understand. You have Kubernetes there, you have a lot of custom-made tools that you have to learn. So leading that project has been very difficult, and because I have to learn so much technology in a very short period of time. But I thank God that I have a team that is supportive, and then you learn from each other.
Nice. By the way, I've shared your blog on the chat, so nimesikia ukisema you like writing, so I've shared it. Guys can go and check out your blog and see the cool stuff you've done. So nice. So another question. I see you're here at Jenga. So what is a day in the life of a software engineer, or your career? What does it take? When you wake up, how do you do your tasks? Just take us through that.
Okay. So I wake up at 5:30 a.m. I go to the gym at around 6 there. From 6 to 7:30, that's when I'm working out, and then I go back home. Catch up till I take breakfast and prepare. At around 8:30 is when I get to work. And within that time, between 8:30 to around 9:15, I'm catching up with emails, previous days' emails. I'm supposed to do code reviews for my peers. I do all that review. And I'm also, if I don't have any of that, I use that time to catch up on what's new, latest technologies, and just pick up some. Then from there, from around 9:30 to 1:15, that's when I'm actively coding, because I have a meeting at 1:15. That's our daily standard. But between 9:30 to 1:15, that's when I'm coding, or we can collaborate with other engineers. I work remotely, so most of our communication is via Slack. So if I need to help out someone else in the engineering team, or if I have any questions, that's my time to get to talk to them. And then after my meeting in the afternoon, that's from 2 p.m., I go back to coding if I need to, but then during that time is when I'm mostly planning out, like I'm designing new features that we need to code in the next probably week, or doing investigations on some bugs, things like that. But I get off work at 5, and then from 5 I'm usually resting. So it's a boring day. It's not really exciting.
Sounds exciting. Sounds so you said you're a fintech, so you've specialized into fintech, right?
Yeah.
Product. Why did you specialize? What's the course? Why not other areas?
Okay. From a young age, I liked business very much. My parents are entrepreneurs, so when I watched them growing up, I always wanted to be like them. But then I also had a love for computing and technology. So having found fintech, I thought that it was a perfect opportunity to marry the two fields that I love doing, which is business and finance, business and technology. And the kind of products that we build, or the ones that I like building, are ones that empower entrepreneurs to manage their money well, or to thrive in whatever form. And money is at the core of whatever you do as a business. So fintech allows me to be at that sweet intersection with business and technology. But I can do other things. I'm not a hardliner that I have to do fintech, but it's just that I'm not sure if you're familiar with the concept of a T-based developer or a T-based person, individual. That means that when you're a T-based person, you have a strong foundation in one thing, but then your verticals, you have one vertical where you can pick up other things, but you have a very strong foundation in one thing. As opposed to the other one is called a POM-based one, where you have a strong foundation, but then it's like a comb. So you have one thing, one thing here, one thing there, but you're not really specialized in one thing, which isn't what I want to do. I want to be specialized in one thing.
Oh, so like a generalist and
it's like a generalist. Yeah.
One is niched to one idea. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and also obviously there's also a monetary benefit to it, because most times fintech is very well paying. So
okay. In that note, which product or which fintech product in Kenya is your favorite, and why? Which one do you think it's like, damn, they really worked on this? Wow.
I don't know if it's Kenyan, but Cellulant is good with Ting. I like the Ting. I think they bought Ting, or they're a subsidiary of Ting. I'm not sure, but I like Ting. It's very seamless.
Okay. Cool. So now let's talk about let's get into UX and now the great stuff. Check. Introduction about you, your career, and all that, and nini. Nice. So how do you collaborate with UX? Do you guys have? I'm assuming you have UX designers, product designers at your company, Sindo?
Yeah, we do.
Cool. So how do you guys collab? How do you guys collaborate? Which tools do you use? How do designers hand off projects to you guys?
Yeah, so I'm going to take you a step back, Kidogo. I'll talk about it in two ways. How I handle product design. I do freelancing once in a while, And so I pick up a few projects here and there if they make financial sense. So, and with that, we have a designer in, my friend is a designer, so we collaborate with him. So I'm going to tell you how we work together, because that is more closer to home. And then I'm going to tell you how in a company, how we work with designers. It's almost similar.
Cool.
Yeah. So whenever we pick up a project, we obviously have to do a requirement. We gather requirements. We go and gather requirements with the client. And from there, I give the product designer a brief. But most times I like involving him from the word go. That way, he can understand what the project is about. The product designer I work with is very product centric. So his input is very much valuable to our process. So we go gather requirements, and then we determine what's important, what's the theme of the company, what they want to achieve, to see. And then we have like a month or 2 weeks to 2 weeks to a month, depending on the priority, to come up with the designs, the mock-up. We use Figma for all our designs, and then we collaborate with we share that with the client as well after some time, once the product has been defined, and we can comment, tell them we need to change this, understand why certain decisions are made, and then they sign off on that. And then as a developer, most times on such projects, I'm the one who's going to do the front end. So I'm going to pick it up and work on the designs that I was given. I know my designer is going to kill me on some of those projects, but he gives me sometimes very difficult designs, but he's very hard on me, but we still need to fulfill what the designer had designed and then hand over that to client. So I think it's a standard project. We do mock-up, collaborate on that, do the refinements, and then share that with the client. And then, yeah, so now at our company, our process is almost similar, but I think they use a lot of tools for that. We use Figma, mostly use Figma actually, it's the same. But that usually comes from the product manager instead of now me as an entrepreneur. And that has to be signed off by marketing, because marketing has to decide this is what we want for the product, the tone, the company, the tone of the product. So it's a bit more bureaucratic when you're working at a large organization as opposed to a small organization. Because marketing, you have to come up with a process. I think it's called a process requirement document. Then from there, you have to understand. We serve a lot of markets. We serve most of Europe. So you have to understand how is this tone going to affect people, let's say in Eastern Europe versus Western Europe. And then from there, you have to come up with like a middle ground. And then marketing signs off on that. And then now that product is developed by our engineers.
Nice. Well, you just described, you said that your designer anaweza kupea certain tasks that you're, is it common like to get some very complex or unusable design from the UI designer from you, and how do you handle that?
Yeah,
like I hear most people saying they say dribble designs are unrealistic or are not usable, which me, I don't agree, because I think they are very usable. You just pick what inspires you. But do you also face that? Like, how do you overcome that challenge? If umepewa designing a moto, but like for you, it's challenging to code.
Yeah, so it doesn't happen often, but it does happen. And when that happens, I think it's important to go back to the drawing board and understand why is it difficult for me to do it, and make the designer understand why. And I listen to them and understand, okay, why is this feature so important to you? Is it user-centered? Is it driving any points towards our product? If we come to an agreement, then we'll just have to figure a way of making sure it works, because you can't be a hardliner on such things. You just have to figure out if it can be done in code. I always take it as a way for me to learn something new, because you might find that the reason I'm refusing to do it is either because it's going to take me so much of my time, or I'm unsure if I can achieve it in code. So if I can achieve it in code, whether it's difficult for me or it's going to take up too much of my time. So if we can agree on why this feature is so important to you as a designer into the product, then I'm going to try my best to implement it, go figure out how to do it. But then if I can't, you just have to agree this feature has to be scrapped.
Nice. So does it happen often? Like, do you get such needy? Oh, and another thing I've remembered, do you guys have a design system at your workplace?
Yes, we do. We have a design system. I think we even have component libraries.
So that means everything the designer design is based on that.
Yes.
So however complex it is, it's based on a libraries zake from Figma.
Yeah, true.
Okay. So it's is it often that they go outside their way and come up with something that's not from your library?
Luckily, it doesn't happen often, but it does happen.
Okay. Damn. And what is the hierarchy at where you work? Like, before something is approved, a design is approved, or before a feature is approved, how many people does it go through? Do you guys have a separate product manager from designers, or you have, like, how is it?
No, we don't. Okay, so each team, what we usually have is each team has a designer. So we have a mobile team, and we have the mobile teams, and we have the front-end teams. So each team is composed of maybe the back-end engineer, front-end engineer, product manager, and a scrum master. So the product manager has to come up with a PRD. So I said a PRD is like a process requirement document. And that document highlights the business needs of the organization. So what are we aiming to achieve, or what features are we aiming to build? From there, we break it down into like a functional requirement document. So that's what's the amount of code that's going to go into this, what do we need to change. And then from there, now the designer already has been told this is what needs to be done from the PRD and from the functional requirement document. And then so from there, they already understand the tone, the theme, etc. They build that, they go out. It can take even 2 weeks or a month. They build that, and then they but within that time, since we're using Figma, we are always collaborating with them. We review them maybe every 2 days or 3 days, so that they don't deviate too much from what they want to achieve. And then now in that time in the background, obviously the front-end engineer can't proceed with anything, but then the back-end engineer already that doesn't concern them. So you're building what you need to build, and then once the design has been approved by so it needs to be approved by marketing, because the marketing team needs to approve that, and also the product manager has to approve that as well. But the top hierarchy for approval is the marketing team. That's the top hierarchy. The top level, whoever approves that.
Nice. So someone can just come up with an idea and it goes, it's pushed to production, which now brings me to another question. So what if you have an idea, like a really cool idea, or the designer just has an idea. Does it also have to go through the same pipeline?
Yeah, if you have an idea, you can submit it. We have like somewhere you can raise a ticket. So you say why this feature needs to be built. You have to validate it with some kind of data. Because it's a feature you want to build, not if it's a new feature that is, you have to like log a ticket. It's quite bureaucratic, but it's understandable why that needs to be done. So you log a ticket, and then people can come and discuss it. And if it makes business sense for us to build that, then the resources are going to be allocated to it to build it. So we are not closed-minded that the idea has to come from product. It can even come from designers or developers or whoever.
Okay, yeah. But it has to make business sense.
Yeah, it has to be backed up by data. You have to provide information on why this is relevant to be built.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I think what some designers or UX designers we need to learn is, in as much as you want to solve a problem, what your boss or what your product manager really care is business. How is this problem bringing business to us? It could be a really cool feature, but like it's not converting customers. It's not doing anything to business. So for instance, as a feature, like you'd be prioritizing a feature like dark mode, which is good, but like maybe your business, maybe you work at a startup and you have like 10 features to go. The priority might not be given a higher priority than other things like things that make money. Yeah, so that's a good point.
And then sorry for interjecting. What are you saying?
Yeah, just continue. I was winding up.
Okay, so one thing we also need to understand is you have to, we talk about is a centered design, right? You have to make features that are geared towards your users or your customers. But then you also need to back that up with data. So I mentioned that you need to come up with data to understand, to back up why this needs to be done. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with something called Productmetrix. So something called Mixpanel. Mixpanel, I'm going to type it out here. Let me just type it. So you have to look at that. So we use that a lot to track user journeys in our application. You can tell from the moment your user logged into the application, the first moment the application loaded, how are they interacting with your elements, with your components? They click a button click, how many times they click this button, or which page did they go to? And then from there, you can analyze what are the pain points in your UI or in your UX that you need to improve. So even when you're going back to like product team to tell them, okay, we need to change this button, move it from that point to that point, you can already go to that dashboard and tell them, okay, look at this. Most of our customers are dropping off at this point, and the reason they're dropping off is this button is not responsive or it's not working as it should. So if you come up with that kind of data and you're already tracking all those analytics in your application, then it's going to make your case easier to make. It's going to make your case easier to argue in product, and then you can prioritize those new features.
Nice. I've seen your Mixpanel. I think they use Heatmap. Is it Heatmap?
Yeah, they use those things
to track user movement and the hot
points. Yeah, you can even attach events. So now you as a designer, you tell your developer to integrate such kind of tools in your in your design. That way you can, when you're trying to do A/B testing, you can determine, okay, this one works and this one doesn't work. And then now you can refine your design based on the metrics that you get.
Nice. Hi, here's a hot take. It's a question. Do you think, which comes first? Do you test an idea first? Do you test a prototype first? Or do you build a product, then test it, then improve it? Or do you build a prototype, test it, then design it? Which one?
Okay. So I'm going to give two answers based on how I've worked. So I've worked in early stage startups and I've worked in very big organizations. And it depends. I think it depends. If you're in an early stage startup, you don't have time to build like fully fledged features. So in that case, like in your MVP, you're going to build a prototype and give it to your customers. Whatever is broken, you're going to fix that at a later point. But then in big organizations, there's a lot of bureaucracy. So in that case, you're not going to build a prototype because already it's going to, you already have all these people that are going to be validating ideas before you build. So in that case, in big organizations, you find that you are building the feature first and then refine it later on. But in early stage startups, you build prototypes and then ship the prototype and go on updating it until it becomes a fully fledged product. But in big organizations, most of the time you're shipping the product like it's 80% complete. So the rest is just fine tuning it.
So what are the pros and cons of starting with a prototype versus starting with almost full product?
Okay, according to me, I think in the prototype, you're going to iterate faster. You move very quickly, and you can go to market and validate your ideas early on in the stage, in the product life cycle. But the cons of that is that sometimes you might ship a bad product, and that is not going to go well with your customers. With fully fledged products. And then another thing maybe you need to understand, I forgot about this. So for instance, our organizational process, there's something called a Canary Deployment. So a Canary Deployment is you build a feature like that feature that you said, I give you like an 80% complete product, but you're not going to show it to all our customers at the same time. You can target sort of like A/B testing. You can target people from a certain region, and then from that you can look at the analytics and say this one works, this one doesn't work, and then revert back to the original one, fine tune it until you push your final product to market. So that's called a Canary deployment, and that's how we use it to ship it like to 50% of our customers have this copy of the application. So I forgot about that, sorry, but yeah, that's part of our process as well.
Interesting. Yeah, okay. So now working with UX designers. Before I even ask the next question, guys, we are almost running. No, we're not running out of time, but we are almost karibu kumaliza. So if you have any question, you can type it on the chat, or you can raise your hand. I'll unmute you and then you can ask it. Hi. So as I wind up, what are the most important things developers should know about UX design and vice versa? What things do you wish UX designers or designers in general should know about working with developers?
Good question. Okay. I think let me start as a developer because that's what I am. I mean, sometimes you can put pressure on, you need to understand the complexities of your UX design, because you might pressure your designer to deliver by a certain date, and they are not, you find that they're not delivering. So you wonder why that is. So you maybe need to understand or take time to talk to them and understand why, or rather have a high level understanding of what they do and why is it, and what are the complexities of their craft. That way you can be more understanding and empathetic of their needs. As a UX designer, maybe understand the limitations of the browser. If you understand the limitations of the browser and the code, and also understand the skill level of your engineer. That way, maybe you might be shipping hard designs and they might not be able to deliver on that. So I think it calls on both parties to be empathetic towards each other.
Nice. So on that, the same note here, let me ask the famous question. Should designers code, in your opinion? Do you think designers should
they code?
Should they know how to code?
I don't think they should know how to code, but they should maybe have a high level understanding of what code is. But I don't think they should know how to code.
Why?
Unless you want to. I don't think it's really a necessity, to be honest. But I think probably some of the best designers also know how to code, because they can do things on their own. But it's not part of your job description about how to code. So you shouldn't know how to code.
Okay, cool. So there's one question here from Ryan. How does working abroad differ from working in Kenya?
Okay.
And
yeah,
go on.
Sorry, 2 questions, right? What's the other one?
But this is a comment. I'll read it after. Yeah, finish.
Okay.
How does working abroad differ from working here in Kenya?
Okay, I work in Kenya. It's just that I work remotely. So the biggest difference is the level of professionalism, I'd say. In working with people from abroad, they're very professional in how they handle things. You're supposed to be independent-minded. First, they give you a lot of independence to do what you do, but then with that comes a lot of responsibility. They're not going to breathe down on your neck like how we have Kenyan clients. They're always breathing down on your neck to do this and that. So the professionalism is top tier. That's one thing I loved about it. Also, specialization is emphasized a lot. My first job, I used to work here. So that's when I used to do a lot of full stack development. And in that, it's a good thing because you understand technology from a wide spectrum, but then it goes back to you become a generalist instead of a specialist. So when you work for, say, sort of bigger companies, you are hired to do one thing and you're supposed to do that one thing very well. You won't touch, I haven't touched front-end code at my job in 2 years, not even a single line of HTML. So I'm going to, no, there I don't, but in my own projects I do. So you are expected to know your craft. If you're hired to do, like, that's why I said my thinking is you, as a designer, you shouldn't know how to code. Because if you're specializing, but it depends on the market, it's important to understand that. But if you're specializing, it's a good thing if you can specialize. So that's one of the biggest differences I've seen. And I appreciate that you need to specialize.
Nice. Cool. So Tim Humphreys anasema, I'm a designer who also code and I find a lot of satisfaction in that. Good for you.
Big up. Yeah, that's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Nice. Inayat Haji anauliza, in regards to coding, why are most job posting asking for knowledge in HTML/CSS, JavaScript, and even TypeScript?
Okay. Yeah. So if you're coding front end, those are the primary languages that you're going to use nowadays. You have to write HTML. For HTML is to give your page structure and whatnot. CSS is going to give your page the design, and then JavaScript is to give your web page or your web application the interactivity. So TypeScript is a variant of JavaScript. And so TypeScript has become very popular because it is statically typed. So we have two types of languages, dynamic and static. A dynamic language is like, so JavaScript was dynamic. That means that you don't have it's called type inference. So the type inference is like you have an integer, you have to specify this is an integer, this is a string. So TypeScript is like an evolution of JavaScript in that it gives you type inference. So you can specify the type of variable that you're declaring. And that is beneficial because when you're working in larger for compiling, there's a lot of benefits to TypeScript.
Well, I don't know if guys mume float up with me float.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah. So the difference between JavaScript need two type inference. So you dynamic. Just look up the difference. Look up the difference between a dynamic language and a static language.
Okay. All right. So Ryan and agree na wewe nasema agree on the general. Agree on the generalist versus specialist. Locally, I find that being a jack of all trades is the norm, especially in design. So, so to wrap up, the last question, if someone is thinking of transitioning from design to code, let's say anataka kuingia into front end na mwingine anataka kuingia back end. So let's start with front end. What advice would you give them, and how can you give them like a roadmap? Which languages should they start with? What should they learn? Which course should they do? etc. etc.
Okay. So if you're doing front end, I think front end would be very much easier if you're a UI UX designer. That's the easiest path for designers because you already know how to design. You can start with HTML, CSS. What I think one of your members asked about that, HTML, CSS. Just start with that. I would say only start with that if you're starting out. Understand how that works and how those two languages interact. And then from there, you can, if you want to add a little bit more of interactivity to your web apps, now you can now start thinking about JavaScript. You could never,
just before you go, what about apps? See, that is web-based, HTML, front-end app.
Yeah, so a front-end app. Okay, so now easy apps are complex, like modern web applications. Yeah.
Like WhatsApp.
WhatsApp, that's a whole different, it's a whole different paradigm because you're thinking about mobile apps. So those ones are things like Kotlin, Java, and so that those languages are for Android. And then Flutter, okay, I'm going to break it down into two. Android, if you want to start on Android, you learn either Java or Kotlin. If you want to do iOS, you can learn Swift, the language called Swift. That's for Apple devices. But then of late there has been it's not in the recent past. There's the new frameworks that if you know how to write in that framework, you can write code that is going to be deployed in both Android and iOS. That's called cross-platform. And for that, you can use either React Native or Flutter. I can list them down for you, and then I'll share that to you to share with the rest of the group.
Cool.
But you learn Flutter and Android, and Flutter is for both. I think that is probably the best way nowadays. If you learn Flutter, I think, or React Native, you could never go wrong, because that way you save time. Especially if you're in a rush, you're going to save a lot of time in your learning journey, because once you learn one, you can deploy to both platforms at the same time. And then in future, as you become more confident and you feel like you want to specialize in one of the platforms, now you can pick up any of the other languages.
Right. Na mtu anataka kufanya backend from UX, from design.
From design, you can pick up all the languages actually. What I would say, JavaScript. You don't underestimate JavaScript. Just pick up. You could never go wrong with JavaScript, because if you know JavaScript, you can easily transition from even the front end. You can move across both of the paradigms. You can, if you learn JavaScript, you can do backend very well and very comfortably. Whether it's the best language for backend, that's debatable, but it's popular. And then you can pick up other languages like Golang. Golang is popular. Rust. It's a big backend is quite it's quite vast. It's not like front end that the technologies are limited. Backend, you can pretty much pick up any language you feel like most comfortable with.
Nice, thanks for that advice. So kulikuwa question moja hapa. I think you answered it. From Sam anasema, what's like being a full stack engineer? How do you keep up with all the technologies involved and also new frameworks that are coming up almost every day? I think you answered.
I can answer it again for his sake.
Sure.
Yeah, so I subscribed to newsletters. There's a newsletter called Byte Go. It's one of the best ones if you're doing backend. So it teaches you a lot about system architecture, all the latest technologies. Byte Go. They have a channel on YouTube as well. I also Fireship. There's a channel called Fireship. That one is when if I want to catch up with front-end technologies. And Twitter, I follow a lot of the thought leaders on Twitter because that's probably the quickest way to get new information.
Nice, thanks. Nice. I think that's all. We're even.
Are there any more questions?
No, there are no more questions. We're in fact out of time. We're supposed to do till 6:30, but we usually do till 7. So today, bado tuko sawa, but the schedule for today was supposed to be 1 hour. Thank you, Lewis, for taking your time, your busy schedule, and gracing us, sharing your knowledge. How can guys find you? Where are you available?
I'm on Twitter.
Twitter. All right. Yeah. Twitter, your handle is? Can you type it?
Very sticky. Or through my website. I mean,